welcome to the Keys to Enjoyment. So this program goes along with our theme for Deeper Peace of Mind at the moment as I'm recording this, which is enjoying life. And one person I know and that I have been very lucky to spend time with who enjoys their life a lot is Dr. Aaron Turner. I love working with Aaron. I love learning from him. He has such a wicked sense of humour. And so when I reached out to him and told him what the theme was, he came straight back and said, oh, I'd love to talk about the keys to enjoyment. So that's what you're going to hear is a series of conversations spread over the next 4 weeks where Aaron and I are going to talk about things like where we look for enjoyment. That's what we're going to start the whole program with. Traditionally, where we go to seek enjoyment. And we're going to talk about where it's really found. We're going to talk about how we kind of take ourselves out of the game, if you like, and quite simply how to have a more amazing, enjoyable experience of life. So all that said, you'll get a video each week over the course of 4 weeks, and I really look forward to hearing what you see, what lands for you, what's helpful to you, what touches your heart, and be prepared for a few giggles on the way. All right, enjoy. So the whole theme for 2020 the whole theme for A Deeper Peace of Mind in 2020 is about enjoying life. So in my own experience and journey through the principles has been one where I was half enjoying life, half having a terrible time in life, and then found the principles and started having a much kind of nicer life overall. And then found myself almost like disengaging from life and just sitting at home watching YouTube videos and listening to podcasts and going on every training and program I possibly could, and and actually enjoying my life doing that.
Yeah.
But not in, like, I think I talked about this at the conference one year where I said I'd find myself watching YouTube videos about how to have a closer connection to my family, and meanwhile they were sitting outside on the patio having a barbecue without me. And it just really came to a head for me at the end of 2019, where I don't know, for whatever reason I stopped doing so much seeking and started to realize that life is right there outside my office door waiting to be enjoyed. And my understanding means I go back out into life and I'm enjoying life, but from a whole different space. And so the whole theme of this year is on the theme of like getting out of your head and enjoying life. And so being able to do something with you on the keys to actually enjoyment and what that is and where it comes from just seemed really pertinent. So thank you for coming to talk on this topic.
No, it's a real pleasure. I think it's a great topic, and it's something that the principles did for me. It was really just understanding just the simplicity of enjoyment, not meaning it's a simple thing, but just understanding how much of a given enjoyment is, how much of a default enjoyment is, how naturally, like how natural enjoyment is, because that really wasn't my experience in life before coming across an understanding of the principles. I mean, it was when I was young, like up to 7, 8, 9 years old. But, you know, after that, up until, you know, early mid-20s, that was not my experience. I did things that I enjoyed, and I did things in order to enjoy them. But I thought those were it was the things I was doing, you know.
Yeah.
Like I loved doing my martial arts, so that was enjoyable. So if I wanted enjoyment, I would go to that. Or I liked music, so if I wanted enjoyment, I would listen to music. And then also in my mind, there were lots of things in life that were fundamentally the opposite of enjoyment, that they would negate enjoyment. So if you had to work, or if you had to study, or if you had to go on an airplane, God forbid, that those were all that they would negate enjoyment. So there was no enjoyment to be had there. So I really do think that enjoyment looked like the exception rather than the rule. And I also think that they were to do with certain things, like certain places, certain activities, certain things, maybe eating, maybe drinking. And that was how I understood it.
Yeah.
You know, and that was how I pursued it. So I was absolutely addicted to martial arts training because I wanted the feeling that I got from it. So I had to do it.
Yeah.
And the rest of my life was kind of in service to that obsession. I couldn't take a real job because I would miss a training time. I just wasn't prepared to do that because then I would miss that feeling. And I couldn't, I had like several years where nobody saw me. They're like, "You coming to my birthday?" I'm like, "When is it?" They're like, 7:00 Wednesday. No.
Wow, I didn't realize you were that full on with it. No, I don't want to go to a party because I might miss my enjoyable martial arts session.
Exactly. It was mania. But and weirdly, and I didn't have a lot of enjoyment. But because of the way I understood it, I was all right with that. I didn't expect to have a lot of enjoyment.
Right, because you already had it set up that that wasn't the norm anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think as you're speaking, you're reminding me of like, I think my understanding of enjoyment was that it was a particular type of feeling, which was that it was a rush, it was a buzz. And so my life used to be set up that figuring out where I could get that rush and that buzz, and it was off work. So I was a complete workaholic, because if I could get the right challenges and if I could get the right environment and if I could get the right success, then I could get that feeling. So I was trapped in a cycle of, and you met me when I was in this cycle of like, well, what do I do? What shall I do? What shall I do for a career? What kind of work should I do? Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. Flip-flopping all the time about what I should do and what would give me the biggest thrills. To try and find that feeling, because it could only come from that I was addicted to that feeling, and that feeling came from achieving something hard or a success or something indefinable. I don't even know what it was, but I know that it drove my behavior. It's like if I'm focusing in work, and if I'm achieving something, and if other people are saying, "Wow, you're amazing," then this is a life well spent.
Yeah.
and so all the time, and so that all the time, I'm the best student, I'm the top of the class, I'm pushing myself to be the best for that recognition, so that I can enjoy my life. So every minute of my life has to be spent doing that, because God forbid I might like sit down next to one of my children while they're drawing something, or push a child on a swing, which doesn't tick any of my boxes, and therefore I'm not enjoying life and I can't imagine anything duller. Then I missed out my kids growing up. I was at my desk the whole time, because in seeking that feeling, that rush that I mistakenly thought was what we mean by the word enjoyment.
Yeah.
So if we don't understand what it is or where it comes from, and our understanding always, like our behaviors are always downstream of what our understanding is, right? So we had no choice but to do martial arts and work hard when it looked like, well, every human being is designed to look for enjoyment, and this is where we find it. And every personal development course that you ever go on, I don't know if you were into that while you were doing your martial arts, but I always have been. And every personal development and every business book and every business training I would go on would talk about, well, find what it is, find your thing that makes you happy, that you can enjoy, that you will get. And like, if you can find the thing, then you'll be happy. And that was the misunderstanding that I was laboring literally under.
I didn't realize how much I was looking for enjoyment in my circumstances until I stopped doing that, and until it stopped making sense. You know what I think it was, Nick, is it was such a given. It was such a unspoken, obvious reality that you were looking for the right things in life to give you happiness. I don't really think I had much enjoyment, even in the things I really liked. it's a bit, I think I was overall too serious.
Which is weird when I know you now, that you would ever be serious.
Yeah, but like I really enjoyed the martial arts, but I was very serious about it. So even though in my overall life that constituted enjoyment, it wouldn't make the grade these days. Like, you call that enjoyment? You said,
Yeah.
well, you should have seen me before I got in here, you know?
Yeah. No, and me too. It's like, what the feeling that I called enjoyment now is not what I would call enjoyment now.
Yeah.
You know, like that. Then it was I liken it to I used to be really absolutely addicted to, it's be like being addicted to candy floss.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, it was sugary and it gave me a rush and it was very attractive and I could shove a lot down, and there was a lot of people dealing candy floss. So there was always more to buy. And I was addicted to candy floss. So I would go, but I could never get enough of it because, you know, there's no nutrition in candy floss. So it doesn't matter how much of it you eat. It's a temporary sugary high. It's never satisfying. You can never get enough of it down you, but there's always more on offer. And so my life was spent in pursuit of candy floss. And the way that it seems to my mind now is like, I did not know that there was steak on offer.
Yeah.
Right. That's what the principles did. It introduced, hey, Nick, there's steak on offer. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Anyway, my candy floss is really cool. Right. I really love my candy floss. So don't interrupt me with all that steak stuff. But as I bumped into this understanding, I could see that there were people dining on something of a different quality that seemed to have a tiny touch of something and was content and full and replete. And I did not know, it never entered my world before that there was anything other than candy floss.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Yeah, so I mean, it's funny because what I heard about enjoyment and what I saw about enjoyment when I was learning about the principles was that basically, but for your thinking, everything's enjoyable. That's kind of what I heard, but that didn't really do anything for me because I didn't know how much thinking I had going on, you know, so it was very theoretical. But as that thinking started to make less sense, as all the kind of thinking I was doing in order to get clarity, in order to do a good job, in order to have a good relationship, as that stopped making sense with the idea that, well, you know, you have that already, you have clarity already, you have wisdom already, you have stability already, you have, like, what are you thinking on top of it for? Was what I heard. It started to make more sense to just walk around not analyzing.
It seems so obvious now.
Yeah.
When you say it like that.
Yeah. How about you walk around not totally distracted? Well, I don't know. Is that going to work? So what was?
Let me think about that.
Yeah, let me think about that. Well, what was really funny about it is I ended up just feeling better. Not intending to feel better, but just feeling better. And then I started to appreciate that when I wasn't distracted and I was comfortable not being distracted and I felt at ease, I was enjoying everything. I was enjoying myself. Things were enjoyable. Like there was a life to life that was vibrant and sweet and joyful and I don't know, interesting, and it was just naturally that way. And that was mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing, that at the time I thought about it as well-being, but actually enjoyment was effortless. Enjoyment was an effortless thing, and there was nothing you needed to do to have enjoyment. Like, that blew my mind as well. Like, you don't need a certain group of people, and I realized this because I I'd got really into the principles, and I wanted to do an internship with George and Linda. And I decided that that's what I was going to do with my life. I wasn't going to do academia anymore. I was going to train with them, and then I was going to teach other people about, you know, what was available that they weren't aware of. And when I got back to England, because we were in Lacona, this huge research proposal that we'd sent in came, and it was granted. So it was like 2 years research. So 2 years research, full-time paid, plus because you're full-time paid, all your fees paid on a PhD. So it's basically a paid PhD. And I was like, oh, so I can do this paid PhD, or I can go to Lacona. And the first thought that popped in my head is, which one's going to make you happy?
Yeah. Well, yes.
That's what popped in my head. But what was funny is when it popped in my head, I was like, it doesn't work like that. Like, who's thinking that? You know, it was so funny to think, wow, I used to think that there was some job or relationship I could be in that would make me happy. That makes no sense whatsoever. Like, I want to go to Lacona and intern, and I'll be happy doing that. But if I did this PhD, I could be happy doing that. And if I got a job at Tesco's, I could be happy doing that, because I started to see, oh my God, is that you're happy is a feeling of kind of feeling that everything's okay. Is like, you know,
But that's so counterintuitive. Sorry to interrupt you before you carry on the story, because, you know, I have the words of my clients inside my head going, yeah, but I know you can't tell me that I would be, I'm always going to the extremes, right? That I wouldn't be happier living in a massive mansion and lying about on the beach than starving in a refugee camp somewhere in the world. Like, you cannot say that one thing is not going to make me happier than another. And that's a very extreme example. But the other example would be like, you can't tell me that I would be like happier without my husband than with my husband. Or if when my kids all leave home than when they are here now. Like, those I can't imagine. Of course, one of them is going to make me happy. If I had a massive bowl of Ben and Jerry's in front of me, or I had a bowl full of worms to eat. I don't know why I'm thinking of that one, but it's like, I know which would make me happier, Aaron.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, what I learned is we think we know that, but because our actual felt experience is being created through the freedom of the mind, freedom of thought, the creativity of thought, you don't know that. You really, 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 really don't know that. You think you know that. And because you think you know that, you think you're going to be happier if you go get an ice cream. How many times have I gone to get an ice cream to be happy and not really tasted it? More than I'd like to admit.
Yeah.
So what is mind blowing is that it feels like what's happening in our life has a direct relationship to how we feel, but really being willing to consider that is absolutely not true will set you free to find a freer experience. But you have to set your experience free. It's like George used to use this example of how you train an elephant, you put a stake in the ground with a chain, and they walk around, and apparently if at some point you take away the stake, they think they're still tied, they won't leave that. Our link between enjoyment and things in our life, that's a made up chain. That's not a real chain. It doesn't really exist. But it exists for you if you think it.
Right. So if you think it works that way, then if you think it works that way, then chances are, given a bowl of ice cream and given a bowl of worms, you're going to enjoy the ice cream more than the worms. Not always.
I don't think. Yeah, you will.
Not even.
Only because you won't enjoy the worms. It's a weird one, really, because I don't. yeah, I don't know that it works. I don't know that it works on both ends, because the amount of times I've spoken to people say, yeah, I was really looking forward to that, and we were da, 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 and it just wasn't as good as I expected. But the other night we were just out and we weren't thinking about it, da, 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 and we had the magical night. And you're like, oh yeah, well, that does make sense.
Yeah, completely. But see, so a lot of people who are listening to this have all come through an experience of anxiety, right? So they've all come through a foundational program where they came to this understanding, chances are because of anxiety.
Yeah.
And so they've all had like the reverse of what we're talking about with enjoyment, the other side of the coin, which is like, I don't want to do that because it makes me anxious, or I don't want to be in that circumstance because it makes me anxious. And when that circumstance is absent, then I'm happier. So I can find or not even enjoyment, but I can find relief, which is the best I can get, by avoiding the circumstances that make me feel anxious. So for me, the best I can get is a lack of anxiety or an absence of anxiety. And I think that's coming from avoiding all the circumstances and the people. But it's the same thing. It's the other side of the coin, right?
Yeah, it really is the same thing. Yeah. No, you're
absolutely. So we think we know that if I get in my car and I drive and I go out of my comfort zone, then I will not feel enjoyment. For starters, enjoyment is totally off the table for starters. Absolute abject fear is probably what's going to happen. And maybe I can white knuckle it, but enjoyment is definitely not possible here.
It's funny listening. I really hear what you're saying, Nick, because we are affected by what we think's going to happen in our experience, particularly if we're afraid something's going to happen in our experience, because as soon as you're worried something's going to happen, or you think it is going to happen, then you're already thinking a certain way, and one of the things that we're pointing to now is we think there's a much higher level of predictability in our experience than there really is. I mean, if our experience is purely down to thought, which is pure creativity, then you could literally have any experience in any second. You could.
Yeah.
And it's just being willing to be humble enough to consider that you don't know as much about what your mind is capable of as you think you do, or as much about what it will do than you think it does, and just willing to be a little more of I don't know, a little more of a student of what it can do than an expert,
Yeah, that's a really good distinction, a really key distinction. But so why does it look like then, to your mind, that we do habitually have, and again, I'm thinking to your ice cream experience, so maybe this isn't even true either, but habitually will enjoy ice cream as a rule, right? Or habitually be nervous, find ourselves nervous when everyone goes out and leaves us in the house on our own, or habitually find ourselves stressed when we don't sleep at night. Like, why do we habitually link is it that elephant and pole thing again, where we habitually, in our minds, we've linked an experience and a thought because we've never considered that there is no chain?
Yeah. See, the way I think about it is, you can have any thought at any time, but you only notice the ones that seem appropriate and credible.
Right.
So for example, if I'm in I don't know what a good example would be, but like if I'm somewhere and I start to feel lonely and that seems ridiculous, I probably won't get lonely because it seems ridiculous. But if I'm having that thought in a time where it seems meaningful and credible that I'm lonely, I might get way into it and get really lonely, but it's the same thought, right? So for example, if I have an anxious thought, let's say I'm gonna make stupid stuff up, but let's say
I know, sorry, we're really going to the extremes on this one today.
Let's say it's Christmas, that's how extreme I'm thinking. And I get an anxious thought and I think, that's ridiculous, why would I be anxious on Christmas? It has no bearing. But if I'm about to go on a TV show and I think it's really important and I get anxious, I might be all about it. Oh, this makes perfect sense. What am I going to do? Oh no, what a time to get anxious. So you're anxious on Christmas, you didn't worry about it. So you start to see it's super made up. It's like when we treat it as credible, it happens. Even though you've had the thought other times. Like, you might have a really enjoyable thought and think, well, that's totally inappropriate right now. This is serious, right?
Yeah.
But when you go get an ice cream or you do something you like, a lot of times you think, oh, I'm going to do that thing. I don't need to worry about anything. And as a result, you feel entitled to not be distracted.
Yeah.
When you're not distracted, out comes your bubbly spirit, and all of a sudden you're enjoying it and you're like, oh, Ben and Jerry, you never fail. No.
Yeah. Yeah. If you go, someone invites you to go for an ice cream and you've got thinking about, oh, I know I'm going to get really worried because I'm going to think about how many calories there are and I know I shouldn't be eating that and it's not part of my diet plan, and that seems like a completely sensible thing to be thinking about given that they've just asked me to go for ice cream and I have an eating disorder, then this thought has credibility. Then for the next person along who thinks you shouldn't eat that, it's not good for you, the thought gets dismissed and the ice cream is enjoyed. But for that person who lends credibility to worried, anxious thinking about food, is going to more likely have that experience just because they have the same thought, but one person gives it credence and the other one doesn't.
Yeah.
But this is what I keep coming back to, what you're saying. There is no chain. There is no link between the ice cream and the experience. There's just a believed link that we
totally,
because we haven't seen that separation, and that separation, that's the freedom, right?
Yeah, totally. Like I this is a good example of it, but people have probably heard me talk about it before because it's such a good example of it. I was working with a guy that was an alcoholic, and he was in anxiety and analysis all day, and he said, a drink makes me feel better. And I was like, that's not true. That is absolute. I know that's not true. He's like, well, I know it is true. I'm like, well, when does it make you feel better? Is it the moment it's in your mouth? Is it the moment it goes down your throat? Is it the moment you start to feel the effects of it? Like, when's the moment you feel better? And it was really cute because he kind of chuckled and he said, you know what, that's really interesting you say that. Do you know when the moment is? I said, no, when's the moment? He says, when I decide to have the drink. I haven't even got the glass out. I haven't got the bottle out. I've just decided. And it's like, I've decided I don't need to worry about anything. And it's that nothing to think about. What's going to make you feel bad? What's going to stop your enjoyment if you're not thinking anything disturbing?
Yeah.
Like, what is there? There's nothing that cannot, if you have nothing to upset you or make you feel bad, then of course you're going to enjoy yourself.